Hello, it's Yvonne back with a tutorial on how I made my Miku hair pieces. So first off, I started by making a sphere out of insulation foam. It's something you can buy at Home Depot, and I took two pieces of them, cut circles, and then glued them together, then started to shape them into a sphere that was the right size and everything. It took a little while, but it's worth it in the end. If you don't want to make it from scratch, you can very easily get the foam from any craft store. You can get just a foam ball and kind of shape it into a cherry, which is what I'm doing now. I just like doing it the hard way, apparently. So after making a little divot at the top where the stem is going to go, I went ahead and just kept carving it until I was happy with it. And then I went in with some sandpaper and smoothed it all out. Next up, I primed it with some gesso. You can also use Mod Podge or some glue or anything like that. Just keep in mind that is not sandable while gesso is. So if you do use Mod Podge, just make sure the piece is very smooth before you apply it. I did about 4 to 5 layers of this and letting it dry completely in between. Then I sanded down any bumps or anything like that before going in with some paint. I used just red acrylic paint, and I mixed in a tiny bit of the gesso just to give it more of a pink and less of a red color, which is what Miku's cherry hair things look like. Just keep in mind that it will dry lighter than the color you see, so if you feel like it's too light, make sure to add a little bit more red to get the right color. Next up, I made the leaves out of craft foam. As you can see, I just made a little leaf pattern and cut it twice for each leaf. I went ahead and just got a craft foam that was the same color as the leaves I wanted, so I didn't have to paint it. If you can't find any craft foam that's the exact same color, you can also paint it with acrylics or spray paint. Just make sure to prime it before if you're using spray paint. Next up, I put wire in between. So I sandwiched it in between the two leaves, making it so I can like bend them and pose them, and I just used hot glue for that. It was pretty straightforward. As you can see, I just used the same wire and went through both of them so that I didn't have to worry about any wires sticking out or anything when I put them two together. And also it's a little bit more sturdy this way. Then I reinforced the little gap in between them. Next up, I decided I wanted to put a little bit of a design on them, so I just used some white acrylic paint and painted the pattern of the leaves. I went for a more cartoony than realistic look, as you can see, and it was just really straightforward. Super easy. Doable for pretty much any experience level. Next up, I clear coated the cherries once they dried fully. I just used a matte clear coat from Rust-Oleum. And once they're completely dry, they are ready to get their stems. So I just pulled them off of the skewers that I was using to paint them with. And for the stem, I just used some of the ivy stem that I had left over, but you can also use zip tie, anything really that has a connector for them. You could even probably use string, but I do recommend something that's a little bit more rigid than string. Next up, I just put the stems in the spots where the skewers were. And I just attached 2 of them together on the same stem, and then did the same thing for the second set. And just making sure that they're pretty well enforced. Next up, I played with the leaves, trying to see what angle I wanted them at. Since the wire did hold this shape pretty well, it was pretty easy to do that. Next up, I took a little bit of craft foam and attached these stems of the cherries to the leaves. For the hairpiece, I just used it's a little comb thing. You can find these at most craft stores. And I actually cut it in half because it was a little bit too long and I needed 2 of them. I just used a razor and then some pliers to kind of break it. And I just super glued it first to the cherries. But in order for it to stick a little bit better, I did sand it down to have a little bit more texture. Once the super glue is dry, I went ahead and just reinforced it with just a little bit of hot glue on the edges so that it wasn't at risk of just popping right off. And there you have it. You can just pop those in on the wig. If you're not going to use ponytail wig for this, I definitely recommend using a different thing to attach it to the wig, but since the ponytail was there, it really helped to kind of just support it. And there you go. Hope this helped.